Hello, this is Angelica Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Blessed Beltane friends, it is Angelica Yingst, and I'm here with your Beltane reading. We are in May, that lusty season. I'm going to play you a little song from Libana. This is called In May, that lusty season. That's why I always say that. So, yeah, it goes on. It's a 3-minute song, and you can find it on YouTube or wherever. I have actually their CD, but I wanted to play a little bit because there is a long history of Beltane, and I want to go through the history and the lore a little bit, and then I'm going to pull a collective reading. So Beltane is in reference to Belfire, the fire of the Celtic god of light. Bel is likely referring to the Celtic sun god, Belinus. So this fire festival marked the beginning of summer as the days grow warmer and longer, and this is the kickoff season of fertility and coupling. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the Celts used fire as a way to purify. So they made 2 bonfires, and they believed that the smoke from this fire at Beltane purified and healed both people and animals. So they would drive their cattle through the smoke and then move them up to the higher summer pastures. So passing this cattle between the 2 fires was thought to ensure fertility, protection, and the fires were used, as a central part of the celebration. So the communal fire was then used to light all the other fires. So people would extinguish their personal fires at home and then take part of this community fire back to their house. So as the wheel of the year turns and the grass turns greener and flowers blossom, Beltane is really this time to celebrate that life. Everything's coming back. The ability to create life and be part of the integrated creation. So we are part of all that is. Beltane is one of the greater holidays on the pagan wheel of the year. So we call these the cross-quarter holidays. And what they are the earth festivals. A lot of us think of the solar festivals, and those marked the equinoxes and solstices. But the 4 ancient Gaelic cross-quarter holidays were demarcated by fire rituals. So they were the traditional beginnings of the season. There's Beltane on May 1st, that kicks off summer. Lunazda, which notes the start of harvest festival in autumn. And that's on August 1st. Then Samhain is the end of harvest season, the celebration of the end. And that's on October 31st, November 1st. And Imbolc on February 1st is the start of spring. That's when all the seeds are stirring. And you kind of might remember that reading that we did in February. So all 4 of the seasonal festivals have these individual rites and traditions that basically are meant to connect with the natural and the supernatural forces of the earth and of all that is. And so, when I said Beltane marks the beginning of summer, I know what you're saying at home, but Angie, spring just started on vernal equinox. And that's how we think of it now. And that's part of this idea that, the Enlightenment brought, I think. If you're building towards summer, though, and you're thinking of summer as like an arc, and the height of summer is summer solstice, meaning that's considered midsummer. Okay, so we see that that's the longest day of the year. So of course that would be the midpoint. So think of it, if you think of it that way, then that we are kind of kicking off the summer of the agrarian calendar. Okay, so it's May 1st starts it off. Midsummer is, July 21st. And then August 1st is Lunazda or Lammas. And that's the first of the harvest festivals, the beginning of autumn or the harvests. Okay, so you're planting seeds in summer. You're letting things grow. You're tending it. And so this is why we also think of Samhain as the end of the year or the new year because it's the end of harvest season. So let's come back to May. Beltane would have been the traditional time for celebrating and honoring the possibility of all the seeds we've planted, the ones we planted at the vernal equinox or Ostara, and what we're still planting. Because, planting doesn't happen all at one shot. You have different crops get planted at different times. And so through all of this period into basically summer solstice, we're still planting seeds and we're caring for the seeds we planted. Now, I don't think anyone who, lived in ancient times would say, yes, this is our time of honoring the seeds. But pretty much this is the time to dream of the good harvest. So we don't just honor the literal seeds we plant, but the metaphoric seeds, the seeds planted with partners or friendships or work or creative projects. This is a traditional time of flirting, of lust, of coupling, and of sex. So fertility and fecundity are both like kind of woven into Beltane and Beltane's time. And this is, the way that we look at the wheel of the year. We are part of nature. We're not separate from it. And that's sort of part of the myth of separation, is that we think, oh, yes, of course, all of the animals are having sex and having babies, but we're not animals, so we don't do that. But in the wheel of the year, yes, we do. We are part of it. So we honor the love, we honor union, we honor sex. And most importantly, we honor fun and lightness. This is a time when, there's everything's green, things are blossoming. We have some things coming to be, okay? Meaning like we have gone through the winter of not having any fresh veggies. We're just living on our stores, blah, blah, blah. Now things are green, there's things we can eat out there. So it is a fun and light time. It's an abundance time. So, notice I said it's a lusty time, not necessarily a marrying time. This is time of flirting, checking each other out, hooking up in the fields, and we're dealing with a time before inhibitions, right? Like before we were told of original sin and the awful like slut shaming hangups from traditional religion. So if these couplings lasted past May, then June was more of a traditional time to handfast or marry. The flowers are blooming and trees and grasses are really taking off. There's bees are buzzing. We work with rabbit energy. We work with bee energy. We work with honey, So this is really the time of spring fever. And that's what it basically is about. We honor that like flirty time. Who here among us hasn't suffered from the spring fever? That clouds your ability to focus on class or anything but the beautiful person a few rows down from you who casually makes eye contact every few minutes. I mean, that exciting feeling is part of what Beltane's trying to capture. So the Beltane festivals were all-night affairs, and Beltane uniquely focuses on that sexuality, so you see all these yonic and phallic symbols. And the lore is that the young Oak King, the one who was birthed at Yule, is now this lusty young man who has been preparing the earth, sowing seeds, and he kind of wins the hand of the maiden earth goddess. Okay, I'm going to also preface this by saying, don't think too much about this, okay? Don't think about the earth birthing the Oak King and then him, seducing her later. There are different aspects of the mother, okay? And so we think of the triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, the crone, and each of these festivals honors different aspects of the maiden, the mother, the crone. This is a maiden time, okay? So we're honoring the earth goddess moving from maiden, hopefully to mother, So both the Oak King and the maiden earth goddess or the mother earth goddess are honored at this time. We also can work with Cernunnos or the Green Man, Pan, again, the Oak King, the maiden goddess, Gaia, Demeter, Demeter. Beltane honors our own unions, okay? And there is a Roman festival called Floralia, which seems to have influenced the way Beltane was celebrated later on. Floralia is celebrated April 27th. It honored the goddess Flora, the goddess of fertility. And you wore flower crowns and made love and, had plays and just general hedonistic Roman stuff that happens pretty much every day. But um, Beltane, which is it's spelled Beltaine, was a Celtic Christian festival, meaning bright light. So again, the way the Christian church kind of like subsumed the local folk religions and kind of made them into Christian festivals, you can see them and the connection. It was basically called Bright Fire, and it honored the release of the cattle into the fields. And actually, I was reading Bethel's daughter, Beth's owl daughter. I'm saying that wrong, but uh, she basically said the medieval church tried to rename the celebration Rudmas in an attempt to distance the people from the maypole, which we'll talk about in a minute. But and that's like an obvious phallus symbol of life. And the Holy Rood was the cross, the symbol of their God's death and resurrection. So as you can imagine, that didn't go over so well. Like, okay, here we are celebrating life, and here we are celebrating death and resurrection. The maypole is still around. Okay, so so standing across from Beltane on the Great Wheel of the Year is Samhain, and these are two biggest festivals of the year. So Beltane calls in light and lightness in the same way that Samhain honors the dark and death. So there is a focus on Beltane on life in all its like sensual glory. Like we're honoring the fact that we have senses and we're human and we can enjoy our bodies and our life. Samhain honors death, grief, and release. That's the end of harvest. So it has a very different feel. But, we call in at Beltane, we release at Samhain, and we can call in partners, babies, growth, projects, creativity, love, lightness. The more food the community had, the more they thrived. And they can focus on different things other than just survival. When you're low on food in stores in the winter, there's not much you can do. You're always trying to survive. You're out hunting, you're doing things like that. So to recap, Beltane honors the pleasures of sex and coupling, like most of nature is doing at the moment. And all acts of love and pleasure ensure the ongoing fertility of the land and therefore the well-being of the community. So farmers would actually couple with their wives in the field for fertility. They would, have sex out there, and those bleeding would bleed into the soil for fertility. And there wasn't a hang up of sex and blood and those kind of things because it's part of being human. It's part of our animalness. So sex, like death, was part of life, and it was part of the culture. So, on Beltane, our ancestors kind of thought about, this is our time to celebrate. And so these were joyous, raucous events with massive bonfires, dancing and singing. And the Beltane fires were said to have healing properties. So they were used for purification and vitality, both of your tools that you kind of made over the winter, which is part of what the work that you do in, the winter time is you knit, you make clothes, you kind of do all the stuff that you're not going to have time to do during harvest. And so all those tools are brought out and they're run through the smoke for cleansing and clearing. The ashes of the bonfires were placed in the fields for fertility. So the biggest part of the Beltane celebrations, or some people call it May Day, May Day is really International Workers' Day. We don't celebrate that here in the U.S. for obvious reasons, but we do celebrate Labor Day, which is a little different. But at Beltane, there's a huge maypole. And so there's this tall wooden pole, which is obviously a phallic symbol, placed in the center of the festivities. And there are ribbons running down. There's a flower wreath, which is the yonic symbol, the symbol of the vagina, right? And it's placed on top of the pole. And it served as a symbol for the feminine. So you have the masculine pole and the wreath going over it. There were brightly colored ribbons that hang from the top of the pole to the ground. And so the maidens and the boys were placed around the pole, and every other was like a girl and a boy, and they would face each other. Okay, so the maidens would grab a ribbon, and the men would grab a ribbon and face each other, and then they would dance, weaving in and out of each other, symbolizing the union of masculine and feminine. And so we when we look at the world through this agrarian calendar or the wheel of the year, we often find some ways of looking at gender that can make people uncomfortable when they're projecting what we understand about gender to the past. So, I'm just asking you to be patient with that. That's part of our history, and especially when we are integrally tied to the earth. So, around Beltane, this idea of masculine and feminine coming together really means two equals three, like two come together and make three. And that growth of the feminine and masculine coming together to form new life is a way of honoring that part of ourselves. So we also balance the masculine and feminine within us for our own fertility. We can't, just kind of think of ourselves as binary. We're on this spectrum of balancing those things. And so, remembering that when we're bringing this fertility to ourselves, to the fields, to our community, what we're really doing is making the difference between life and death. Okay. Expanding the family, expanding our ideas, expanding our consciousness. So, Beltane honors sexuality and honors light and dark and masculine and feminine. And we can certainly expand our ideas of sexuality now, but projecting that onto the past won't really help, because this is an idea of the masculine and feminine, okay? The phallic and the yonic and coming together. So, this is a way for us to work with these ideas, especially if we were shown toxic models of masculine and toxic models of feminine within our own religious upbringings. We can help balance that work during Beltane. So during Beltane, people had sex, and they would go out into the fields all night, or and encourage that fertility. So if they were in the fields, awesome. If they were in the woods, they would bring back like the soil and the greenery and the flowers and put them in the fields, So babies conceived during couplings at Beltane were called Mary Begots, and they were definitely thought to be magical or blessed by the gods. So Mary Begots were supposed to be full of life and love and joy and humor. And as is thought, they carry the energy of Beltane and the joy of the season. So Mary Begots, if all goes according to plan in the pregnancy, are born somewhere in January 21st, January 22nd, which basically means my dad is a Mary Begot. My dear friend Kelly, who passed in 2017, she's a Mary Begot. Lance, another one of my dear friends, is a Mary Begot. I apparently really love Mary Begots. But I think all January and, early February babies are considered Mary Begots. So our little magical Mary Begots can run about the earth. So speaking of magic and these magical little beings, magic is really activated at this time. Divination, spell work is thought to be much easier around Beltane. So all manner of people engaged in divination and magical behaviors, from, anointing the front door to the grandmother who threw the soup bones in the fire to read in the morning, to the maiden washing her face with the dew of Beltane to ensure sustained beauty through the year. In fact, the two greater Shabbats of the year, Samhain and Beltane, honor the thinness of the veil between the worlds by encouraging us to do divination and dive into tarot and oracle cards and runes and scry in bowls of water. Samhain honors the thinness of the veil between our world and the world of the dead, whereas Beltane honors the time of the year when the veil was thin between the human and the fairy realm. So people were keen to kind of please the Sidhe, or the fairies, because they were believed to be very mischievous around Beltane. And, fae gonna fae, they're gonna be mischievous. The fairies, this is a quote from the 1825 text from Thomas Crofton Croker, who says, the fairies were supposed to then possess the power and inclination to do all sorts of mischief without the slightest restraint. And so one prank that she were known for was poisoning milk and dairy products and offering milk on the doorstep in hopes of appeasing the Sidhe was the important part. So the Beltane fires were also understood to ward off any tricksters or witches. So Beltane is rich with that love magic too. So remember, you don't want to start a relationship in a hostage situation. So practice ethical love magic. But if you have intentions around love and fertility, this is a great time to write them on a piece of paper, to call in a partner, blow it on the wind, sing it out, allow the wind to carry your prayers to spirit. Beltane is also a traditional time to renew and reawaken our own fire, our inner fire, our creative fire, the connection with community and other people, our connection with the land. So this is a great time to go hiking and be out in nature, outside every day if you can. This day is full of joy and meaning. And if you want to celebrate, you can find a maypole celebration, construct a small one for your altar. You can wear a flower crown. That's kind of a traditional Beltane thing to do. You can have awesome sex with yourself or someone else, make a bonfire, feast on the greens of the earth, or just enjoy the meat suit, the humanness of us, the sensual pleasures, textures, and foods and smells, and make things beautiful. And that's a really big part of Beltane. So before I get to the reading, I just want to say I am going to do a one-day class on cycles and talk about the agrarian wheel of the year, moon cycles, life cycles. This is what the basis of my oracle cards are on. And I'm determined to publish them at some point. But if you're interested in doing that, just always check my website under events. I try to list everything I'm offering there. And, it's really easy to sign up. And just if you forget, sign up for my newsletter, because I usually send things out before I launch them. So for the reading, I did the reading from my book, and it's the Beltane reading, but I kind of adapted it to a collective. And I also decided to use Lorraine Anderson and Juliet Diaz's oracle deck called The Seasons of the Witch, and it's the Beltane Oracle. So I really loved doing it with these, and they're just such beautiful cards. And they have ones for Yule, Samhain, and Beltane. So I think more are coming, but I just love these cards so much. So in the first position, and I will post a link to the layout, but there's one on Instagram that I posted. But our current state, we pulled the hand fasting card, which is the card of unity. And it's about not necessarily getting married to someone, but it's about asking for help. Like whatever project you're doing, whatever big idea you have, it is time to expand it out and ask for other people, other people's assistance, other people's help. This is time to work together in community, not work alone. Okay, so our current state is like, hey, we've got stuff moving and going. Just ask for the help that you need. Our second position is what is feeding you right now. And the B comes in as a guide. And B is really about possibilities, is how they use the keyword for B. And so this is really, B is the ally for hard work, especially hardworking community. So it's basically like, don't stay in the hive, go out into the world. So B goes to lots of flowers, so has lots of things coming in different ways. So bee medicine is about leaving the hive, putting yourself out there, working hard, collecting all the info, bringing in lots of streams of information. This is what's going to feed you, is to be active. So this is an active card, an active state. The part of you that's already blossoming and out there into the world is oracle. So this is your connection to spirit and your own ability to trust and build a relationship with your guides and yourself, your higher self. You have to trust your own innate intuitive and psychic powers. So if you don't know this already, start to think of everything that comes into your consciousness during the day that catches your interest. If it's a song and you don't even notice it, it's not your medicine. But, spirit speaks with us with synchronicities, signs, songs on the radio, animals that cross our path. So just stop second guessing and going, I wonder if that cardinal was my mom. It is. Allow it to be. Just let it be true, and allow everything in nature, at least today during Beltane and this week, allow it to be the message. And ask your guides for help, ask your ancestors for help, ask your angels for help. Just like, where we are right now with hand fasting and asking our community for help, we also have to pray and ask our higher power and ask everybody into the situation, that we trust. Our spirit guides are there for our highest good. So just ask them. It's a gift for them and it's a gift for you. Okay? Now, what challenges us, the thing that we're ready to kind of let go of and start, first we're starting with what challenges us. And I pulled the Fae card, and that card is about misunderstanding. So it's almost like, Mercury retrograde is calling you, hey, it's Mercury retrograde here. I'm not leaving for another 2 weeks. So, you just got to get used to the misunderstandings right now. No, joke. But, this card is about having a misunderstanding and miscommunication, which is like so ripe right now. So honestly, just give your friend, your colleague, your partner, your parents, your kids, the benefit of the doubt. Don't go to the bad place. Don't think, oh, they probably said that because they hate me, or they said this thing that was unkind, or they made this offhanded comment. Just let's not hold on to grudges. Misunderstandings are going to happen. This is what Mercury retrograde's about. So maybe it's like that meme, like don't hold them accountable for what they said during Mercury retrograde. Give them a wide berth of compassion and forgiveness for misunderstandings. I mean, we're all suffering with a little bit of dipshitism right now. So just allow the misunderstandings to be a way to start a conversation and ask for clarity and ask for more, just say, I don't think this is what you meant, but this is what I heard. Can you tell me what you meant? And let them explain. And, if it feels better, you can wait a couple weeks to do that until Mercury retrograde's over. But this is a time for being compassionate rather than harsh. So what we really need to release, though, for growth is this idea of boundaries, and it's not that we're releasing boundaries, it's that we're instilling some boundaries. So we're releasing our lack of self-respect. Boundaries, the key word here is self-respect. So we're letting go of anyone or anything demanding time or energy without reciprocity. Okay, do you want me to repeat that? We're letting go of anyone or anything demanding time or energy without reciprocity. There's no free lunches here. We're not doing free work. We're not getting volunteered for jobs we have no time for. We're releasing people pleasing. And we're moving into self-respect and boundaries. Self-respect is the king of the jungle here, okay? It's not that we can't give of ourselves, but we can't give of ourselves with, nothing left. We need to have something to feed our souls. So if you're wondering why you're so drained, Angie, stop giving of yourself. Without reciprocity, people pleasing is really dark at times, and I know I have a really hard time saying no to certain things and people, and it's part of how I was raised. So it's like fighting an instinct, but it is a muscle, and you can work it and you can get better at it. Okay. Because what nourishes you here is, the card came up as sex magic. What nourishes you is your uninhibited self. So do you even know what turns you on? Like when we give of ourselves too much, when we lack boundaries, we're not doing stuff for us. We forget what even lights our fire, what gets us passionate and excited. And, of course, this can be about sex, but what I'm really talking about is your passion. Sex magic and creative magic are the same. It's about passion. It's about your research, the thing that gets you fired up and creative and makes you want to do your thing. So take time to light your fire, whatever that is. What's the thing that gets you going? What always works to put you in a good mood? You can do it in private. And you can do, obviously if it's actual sex, of course you're going to do that in private. But I mean, you can paint, write, sing, dance. I mean, I love playing guitar. I haven't played guitar in 6 months because I'm so busy. But, whatever you do, make sure it opens you to what you're really passionate about, instead of doing all the other free work that you do, giving, and not thinking of the self. So do it for you, uninhibited, because knowing yourself is a great chakra balancer. Knowing how to light your own fire is a really important thing to know about yourself. Okay? The last position is what we're going to harvest during this time. And the word chant came up. So speak your truth. Chanting is as my teacher Pixie says, singing is the language of the earth. And my mornings are filled with bird song and sounds of the earth. And, I sing my prayers in the morning. I sing up the names of people who I'm doing Reiki on or who ask me to pray for them. So, singing is very opening for the throat chakra. But really what this is about, what this card is about, is what is your truth? What song do you need to sing? This is all about communicating who you are without fear of repercussions. And it goes back to, what needs to get released and what nourishes you is like what turns you on. That means who are you? Because, coming out of whatever closet you're in, hey, I really don't like doing X, Y, and Z, even though I've been doing X, Y, and Z, that's kind of coming out too, hey, I really need to be honest. This isn't a thing I can do anymore, So do it first in safe places. People in your inner circle, tell them who you really are. Tell your story. There's no such thing as being too much, honey. You're perfect. Being too much is people who can't handle. You know what I mean? Like they're the people that are the problem. If they can't handle you, that's their problem, not yours. You're perfect. Your story needs to be heard. And we're allowing spirit to guide us during this Beltane time to share who we are uninhibited and share our art and share our magic and share our words and share our story and dance and sing and be who you are. So I'm so grateful to be able to come here and do this reading for Beltane. If you're a part of my membership group, I offer readings at the new moon and full moon that are similar to this, though with the Rider Waite Smith Tarot. And I'm teaching tarot right now, which I'm really excited about. We have a new 9-week class going. In the fall, I'll be teaching my mentoring circle, which is psychic and shamanic development kind of circle for healers and psychics. And of course, I'm going to be doing that cycles class coming up here either in May or June, and some other one-off classes. I think, as tarot wraps up, I'll probably do some more advanced tarot classes, one-offs. So just keep following along. Of course, Holding Spaces is still there. That's an ethics class for energy healers. And I think it's a really important class. I taught at Hibiscus Moon, but I have it for sale in my shop. And I put some links to things that I talked about in the show notes. And so blessed Beltane and have a great May.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.